Alexandra from the United States who has multiple sclerosis. Welcome, Alexandra.
Oh, thank you so much, Linda. It's an honor to be part of this.
Could you tell us when you first started to notice MS symptoms?
Yes, I would say that I began noticing symptoms several years before my diagnosis at the end of 2006. I did not know that they were MS. The symptoms were weakness on my right side, my right leg dragged, especially my right foot. I had foot drop or whatever you want to call it. And I had a number of falls. It just didn't make sense, that I kept falling. I did have one very serious fall where I broke both my wrists. And that was in 2005. Even so, I hesitated to try to find out what was going on because my father had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in his 40s, and I think basically in the back of my mind I feared that was what was wrong with me, and I really didn't want to know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's understandable, isn't it? Were you offered any drugs when you were diagnosed?
Yes, I was. The doctor that did the diagnosis in Seattle suggested that I go on Copaxone. She explained that the drug was very expensive, but that it had fewer side effects than the other major drugs for multiple sclerosis. And I wasn't totally comfortable with taking the drug because I had done enough research to figure out that there is no sanctioned treatment for primary progressive multiple sclerosis, which is what I have. And I asked the doctor about that, and she said, well, the categories are somewhat arbitrary, and it's not always easy to precisely pinpoint that you do indeed have primary progressive multiple sclerosis. She said that since I had excellent health coverage, I might try the drug. And I did try it. I was very uncomfortable with the cost, even though I had good health insurance. I questioned the idea of taking it when I had primary progressive MS, and I also had some very uncomfortable site reactions from the injections. And so I only stayed on that drug for probably a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Was it difficult to obtain a prescription for LDN?
No, it wasn't. I went to my primary care physician with information that I printed out from the internet and presented that to him and asked him to prescribe the drug to me. And he immediately said that he was familiar with the drug naltrexone, and he didn't have a problem prescribing it to me if I thought it would help me. He said, as far as he knew, there were no side effects, and it wasn't a narcotic or something like that, and it's something that would be abused. And so he said if I thought it would help me, he would be willing to prescribe it, and he did.
Wonderful. How did you get the prescription filled? Was that easy?
Yes, it was. I was in Anchorage, Alaska at the time, and there were at least 2 compounding pharmacies. I didn't quite understand early on that there aren't that many compounding pharmacies in the United States, but they did have one in Anchorage, and I went there. Later, however, I did more research and discovered that there are a number of pharmacies that are recommended by LDN people specifically, and that these pharmacies are tested regularly for very precise filling of the prescription. So I later switched to Earmont in New York City, and I've been extremely happy with that.
Mm-hmm. Did you notice any introductory side effects?
Yes, I did. I had a fair amount of muscle stiffness that was, I would say, uncomfortable. And at the time, I didn't really know about the idea of, working your way up to 4.5. So I just started on 4.5. I read, though, that the muscle stiffness that I was experiencing was most likely transitory, and so I just decided to ride it out because I was 100% committed to giving that drug a try. I actually felt desperate, and I wanted to do everything I could to try the drug.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take before you started to notice improvements?
I noticed improvements almost immediately. I was having a lot of numbness in my right foot, and it was really terrifying to me because I was afraid I would lose the feeling in my foot entirely and, lose my ability to get around. And I would say within about 2 or 3 days, I started getting more feeling in my foot, and it was just the most wonderful relief. I also didn't have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom as often. I only had to get up, once or twice as opposed to 3 or 4 times. I also had vivid dreams, but that wasn't a big deal. They weren't bad dreams. They were just more vivid.
Mm-hmm. If you were to rate your quality of life from 1 to 10 before you started LDN, what do you think it would be?
Well, immediately after my diagnosis, I would say my quality of life was very low. I tend to be a very optimistic and a positive person,
mm-hmm.
and so even with being in such a dire mental state with the diagnosis, I was probably a little bit maybe more upbeat than the average person. But even so, I would say I was probably on a 3 or 4 right after I got diagnosed because
mm-hmm.
I was very worried and depressed.
Yes. And what would you say your quality of life would rate now?
Oh gosh, I'd have to put it. Well, I mean, some days are better than others, but I would put it at a 9 or a 10. I mean, I just feel extremely blessed, and I get around now. I hardly use a cane. I was using a cane quite a bit for a while. I don't have near as much fatigue. I mean, I was falling asleep, in the middle of the afternoon when I was working all the time, and had just been diagnosed. I think mentally I was depressed. I'm much happier now. I don't know if LDN has anything to do with that, but I think it does. I just, and I don't think the weakness on my right side is as pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's still some there, but, I've been taking it now since early 2007, and so that means I've been taking it for several years now, and for a while there, it was very difficult for me to write, hand write something with my right hand, and I was tested by a physical therapist, and even though I am right-handed, my left hand tested with more dexterity than my right, and of course that's because of the weakness on my right side. But now my writing is maybe a little bit slower than it used to be, but it's, I would say, very close to normal.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. What would you say to other people with primary progressive